I was sitting in my sofa once, craving every single type of food possible, and I have this really bad habit of latching onto the first food item I see the minute my stomach demands food. Bad combo. I was just rewatching the Pokemon X and Y anime, as one does, and my eyes and stomach were blessed by the moment that Serena showed her brand new Pokepuffs she made. My mouth was foaming, my stomach was roaring, and my windows were closed. And my, I was so gobsmacked, I decided to quench my hunger with some bread. Colors weave into. I don't think I've ever mentioned this in a video, but I'm a really big fan of baking. I'm telling you, if I was in one of those Pokemon journeys in the anime, I would be baking away like nobody's business. Granted, I'm no master in the craft, but I do have fun and can make pretty basic things. As long as the instructions are in the box, I am good to go. And ever since that day I watched the Pokemon anime, I was kind of wondering what a Pokepuff would taste like. And yes, I did my research on how to make one, but then immediately went to pay attention to the next set of jingling keys that would hold my attention for a small time. Maybe when I get the chance I'll invite you all to bake Pokepuffs, but maybe another day. But the keys are jingling and I do want to talk about Pokepuffs, so let's get into it. Pokepuffs were introduced in Generation 6 in a brand new feature called Pokemon Amie. Now, in this mode, you were able to hang out with your Pokemon, play games with them, and of course, feed them the titular Pokepuffs, the quickest way to earn their affection. And there's a plethora of Pokepuffs to feed them, from different flavors to different levels. Let's talk about the flavors first. There were a total of 5 different flavors: sweet, mint, citrus, mocha, and spice, or as I like to call them as a kid, strawberry, lemon, apple, chocolate, and more chocolate. I don't know why none of them are canonically chocolate flavored. I mean, they might be, but if I were a Pokemon, I'd be more inclined to eat a Pokepuff named Chocolate than Spice. And all of these 5 flavors have different levels. The higher the level, the more affection they give. You have your basic, frosted, fancy, deluxe, and supreme. The way you would get them would be pretty simple. The more affection the Pokepuff gives, the harder the difficulty has to be in the minigames in Pokemon Amie has to be. And you have to perform really well. So, for your frosted ones, you would have to be excelling in the easy mode in others, the fancy ones in the normal mode in others, the deluxe and the hard modes in others, and for the supreme ones, you need 5 stars in the unlimited versions of the games. So, it was a bit of a chore, but still a little simple. Personally, I would only feed my Pokemon the frosted ones, mainly because they're the ones that look the best. I like frosting, I really do. However, there's 2 super mega awesome Pokepuffs you could only get from visitors in specific occasions. Yeah, if you had friends in the game back when that was a thing. You could get Pokemon visitors if you had Pokemon Amie on the lower part of your screen, and they would give you Pokepuffs. They all range from multiple types, but you can only get 2 specific ones in certain moments in time. First, you have this very tasty looking one you would only get once you enter the Hall of Fame. And then, under curtain number 2, you also have this one, which would be given to you on the day of your birthday. Aww. So, here's another game you should play on your birthday for a special surprise. Both of these Pokepuffs give you the most amount of affection, and while they might take either a lot of work or a lot of time to wait, I'd say they're worth it just to collect them. To wrap up this segment of Pokepuffs, here's a random fun fact. Did you know that there's 7 Pokemon that cannot eat Pokepuffs? Now that's a real Pokemon tragedy. Unfortunately, our lineup is Metapod, Kakuna, Pinecone, Silcoon, Cascoon, Shedinja, and Spewa. Makes sense. For most of these Pokemon, they're technically inside the cocoon, so they wouldn't be able to eat them, but it's still a shame nonetheless. Now, unfortunately, Pokepuffs pretty much stayed in Kalos. I know, and you guys. But they are very rich in history, and there's a reason why it always clicked with me why they were kind of Kalos exclusive. You see, when I think of Pokepuffs, the first thing that came to my head was that they look exactly like macarons. Specifically macarons, not macaroons, you guys. You know, sweet, tiny looking pastries that look like a piece of art, delicate looking, and honestly kind of expensive. Well, at least the fancier ones. The typical macarons that are mostly associated with that name are French macarons. Macarons have a long history, but the macarons we know today started around the 1790s, when 2 Carmelite nuns seeking asylum in Nancy during the French Revolution baked and sold the macaron cookies in order to pay for their housing. These nuns became known as the Macaron Sisters. However, they only sold the cookie part of the macaron. It didn't have any filling, and it wasn't until 1930 where Pierre de Fontaine, I'm so sorry if I butchered your name, a Parisian patissier, took 2 of these cookie macarons and sandwiched them together using ganache. And just like Debbie Ryan in that one interview, history was made. And thus, the traditional Parisian macarons were created, which can be found all over the world. And countries all around the world have their own versions of macarons. In India, they have their own variety of macarons called Thuthukudi macarons, which were made of cashews instead of almond, since they were locally available. In South Korea, they created and popularized this really thick macarons called macarons, which are also called tunkarons, and look like that. They intentionally overfill the macarons so that it borderline looks like an ice cream sandwich. It looks so good. In Switzerland, there's a brand named Luxembourgelli, and they have lighter and much smaller macarons than most people sell. And those are probably the most visual differences with macarons, because then you have the recipes where it's a little difficult to appreciate the different ways of making macarons. For example, in Italy, the meringue used is very different from French macarons, since Italian ones use a hot sugar syrup instead of regular powdered sugar. Macarons have truly evolved from how they were made years ago, and I think one of my favorite aspects of cuisine is the way different countries have their different interpretations of a singular dish. Honestly, let's do a world tour around the world, and let's go and try all the different types of macarons. Ooh, let's start with France! And you know what's also based on France? Kalos. Even the shape of Kalos looks exactly like a replica of France. And yeah, there's many tellings that Kalos looks like France, from the cities, architecture, the literal non-Eiffel Tower. But the one thing that I always fell in love with that kind of made me appreciate the tiny little details the Pokemon team would add to make the regions come alive would be Pokepuffs. Unfortunately, I've never had a macaron in my life, like, ever. I've come in contact with them, but never eaten them, which is weird. But hopefully I get the chance to eat one. Or better yet, maybe I can get the chance to make some Pokepuffs, fulfill my dream of being like Serena, and perhaps making, ooh, jingling keys.